You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 251, Solo, a Star Wars story novelization, expanded edition, something along those lines. We're going to be talking about the novel, finally, and joining me tonight, as always, is Jonesy. Jonesy, how you doing this evening?
I'm doing all right, man. By the time people listen to this, I guess Patreons, I'll be at Disney World, the House of Mouse, and then by the time our normal release schedule goes, I'll be back. So had a nice long weekend at Disney World.
Man. You're so lucky. Yeah, I won't be doing anything that exciting.
Well, here's the thing. The weather there is going to be just as hot and humid as it is here in Houston. So
no. We
don't escape. Yeah, we don't escape the weather at least.
Yeah. Are you planning on posting any pictures on like social media and stuff? Should you have any run-ins with Star Wars related costume characters and the like?
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, anytime I'm over in the Star Wars area, I tend to try to snap something. So people just have to keep their eyes posted to social media and Discord.
Oh, cool. Let's get to the news. We've got a couple things to talk about. You know, we kind of went into this evening with really not too much to talk about, and then as always, 0 hour, the Jon Favreau dropped a bombshell on us. But we'll get to that in a second. First, let's take care of something. A quick announcement. Earglue Media, as you all know, is the name of the podcast network that Mike started just a few weeks ago, if not a couple months ago, officially, and we are finally proud to announce, at least I am finally proud to announce that we have a website that is up and running, and credit to you, man, because I know you've done a crap ton of work to get this thing up and running. It looks awesome. I'm so happy with it. I've been giving Mike a lot of grief over the last few months, if not a full year now, about getting a website presence up and going and that kind of thing. And it finally took, I think, both you and he just to get together. You took the reins of it, and it's up now. So eargluemedia.com is the website, and if you go there, it's got all of our shows. You've done an amazing job of getting all of the shows uploaded as well for the audio file, so you can listen to the shows there on the website. There's some things in there where you can see kind of like our bios, and there's probably a lot more in there that I haven't really poked around, but I'm so happy with it. So first off, thank you for putting that work into it. And thanks for Mike as well. It really was both of you, but I know you did a lot of the heavy lifting. So it looks great, and really good job on the website.
I appreciate that. Yeah. What's cool about it is that all 55 episodes of Bad Gamers Anonymous is in there. What do you have? Like about a dozen or so almost of Basement?
Yeah, but they're 3 hours long. So
yeah. So we've got about 100 hours of content for the Basement loaded. And then we have over 250 episodes of the Cantina Cast loaded. So sadly, episodes 1 through 21 and the famed or the infamous holiday special are still locked safely away in the vault. And Mr. Rondo claims he has lost the key. But yeah, so everything, like pretty much everything we've done that's available is all loaded there. So if people want to go and sample a little bit of the Basement or sample a little bit of Bad Gamers. And of course, when we get the He-Man podcast and some other things that we're working on up, people will be able to go in there and just sample what they like. And then if they like it, they can go and subscribe, the normal way. So, but like you said,
yeah,
it's cool to have it out there, and there's ways to contact us if you want to send us an email or anything else. Feel free to do that. And if something's not working, let me know too.
That's great. And don't give your hopes up yet on the holiday special, because we have Celebration coming up, and there's probably an amount of alcohol that we could probably get within Mike that would probably loosen that up a little bit. So stay tuned. More to come. Maybe
I thought I found the MP3 and then I tried to play it and it didn't work. So yeah, that was a pretty mean prank that he must have played on me. But I was like, ooh, I finally got it. I felt all special that I had like secret access or something. And I tried to do something with it and like, no, wah.
All right. Well, so yeah, we'll put the link in the show notes. It'll probably be there as a permanent staple now for the show notes going forward. But again, eargluemedia.com in order to get to the website. So let's get to the Star Wars news. And this is what we were talking about earlier. So Jon Favreau released I don't know, what is this? Just like an image. I guess it's text really more than anything, which may not sound that exciting, but it's really about his project that he's working on. So Jonesy, what all did he release here, and what are you gathering from it? I know there's a lot of speculation going around right now, but what are your initial thoughts after reading this and seeing it?
So on his social media today, I think later this afternoon, today's October 3rd, he released The Mandalorian. And it basically summarizes, after the stories of Jango and Boba Fett, another warrior emerges in the Star Wars universe. The Mandalorian is set after the fall of the Empire and before the emergence of the First Order. We follow the travails of a lone gunfighter in the outer reaches of the galaxy, far from the authority of the New Republic. So it's pretty loosey-goosey right now. There are not a lot of specifics there. And you could take a lot of characters and put them into this timeline. And of course, folks like Sabine comes up pretty quick, because there was a good end of Rebels really said she's very much involved. But this seems to be more loner. So I don't know if this is going to be as much her story, but I was starting to think of others that we at least know of. If they don't go a brand new character, if they pull another character out, I'm wondering if they would bring back like a Fen Rao or something like that, where they had a really good arc, but they kind of got left in Rebels, and we don't know, where that story went. And presumably something has happened with Mandalore after the events of Rebels. So, we'll get some different flavor. Did you have any ideas about what might be coming out of this?
The only person that really, so Sabine, I think it would be cool, just because I'm a huge Sabine fan. The first person that really came to mind for me was Cobb Vanth. Do you remember him from the Aftermath novels?
Yeah, a little bit.
He was like so he was the guy. He was he found Mandalorian armor, right? So I don't think and then it's been a while since I read the books, and literally this has just happened like a couple hours ago, so I have not had a chance to dive into this too much, but if memory serves, he had found the Mandalorian armor or got it from Jawas or something like that. But he was on Tatooine. He ended up kind of taking over and becoming a sheriff. He was kind of a gunslinging sheriff who wore Mandalorian armor. And I think, I'm trying to remember the name of the city. He changed the name, or the name changed to Free something. I'm sorry. But anyway, Freetown is what it was. So Freetown is what he was in charge of there on Tatooine. But that was the guy that came to mind, because he was when I read Gunfighter, I thought, oh, that's almost him to a T. And he shows up in all three of the Aftermath novels. It's kind of like these little, side stories that they touch on briefly. And it always felt, well, I shouldn't say it always felt out of place, but it was a little bit out of place. So that would be somebody, maybe it's a descendant of like Pre Vizsla, just because it's Favreau, right? Maybe he's got, who knows? We know it's not Pre Vizsla because he has no head,
right?
But maybe it's a descendant there or something. But even if it's just a brand new character, the fact that it's a Mandalorian new character, and this takes place right after, Jedi, but before the First Order, it's a pretty exciting time. And I think we threw this out there as a possible option. If I'm not, I don't want to take credit for it if we didn't, but I could have sworn we threw this out there as a possible option when we first were kind of speculating what the show was. But to be fair, we throw a lot of crap out there, and eventually something's going to stick.
Right.
So, but yeah, it's all pretty exciting stuff. But that was the first person. Cobb Vanth was the character that came to mind.
That's a really good call, because again, it's a character that's established in some capacity, and they keep wanting to pull these characters and flush them out a little bit. So it wouldn't surprise me. And we've had enough time between that novel. I mean, man, it's been years, I think, since I've read or listened to it. And so that's a good call.
I'm actually going to go back and just read up to make sure I'm not going crazy. But I may go back and just touch on those parts in the books and see if there's anything that maybe sticks. So, but that was pretty much it, right? I mean, we got that confirmation from Favreau. I thought I saw Kennedy had released something, or maybe she just retweeted or whatever.
Yeah, there's been a lot of leaked set video or set photos and things like that lately. So those continue to leak out. It's a lot of exterior, though. I think they've got some of the costumes, but nothing really conclusive. And I think we had a name of an actor that joined the show. I'm not familiar with him though.
I think he was. Yeah, he was. I think he's still a rumor at this point, but it was confirmed
Pedro
sources kind of thing.
Like that.
Yeah, Pedro something Pascal.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Maybe not
one
Game
I'm
of Thrones
familiar
guy,
with.
Whoever that is. Yep,
he's a Game of Thrones actor. I guess.
You're right.
Okay.
Right.
I haven't watched Game of Thrones.
Yeah. So these pieces are. Yeah, I haven't either. So the pieces look like they're kind of coming together, and this was a huge piece right here. So exciting stuff. I will keep an eye on this, of course, and as that develops, we'll come back and discuss.
Is this something
more.
you think at Celebration we're going to get a visual or some sort of teaser?
Yeah, I'm all in. I think we'll get a lot more at Celebration, just given the timing of it all. So
it's going to be a big celebration, I think.
Yeah, it's going to be quite a big celebration.
Get multiple TV shows, movie. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much stuff that's coming down the pipeline, and they've, as long as as many days as the show goes, and the content so far that they've, talked about releasing, or I guess the show content itself, there's a lot of room. They've got a lot of time to squeeze in a lot of this stuff, so I think we'll get a lot. That was 3 lots. All right, the other thing we had was Star Wars is at New York Comic-Con this weekend. That's, of course, the big convention in New York, and there's quite a few things on here. We won't get into every one of them. It's great. They've got a lot of women in galaxy discussion that's coming up. They've got another one where they're talking about women authors, and one of which we're going to talk about tonight in Myrtle Lafferty. So those are both really cool. They're going to be doing our Star Wars stories, where they're going to have inspiring tales from personal tales from fans. That looks cool. And then there's one that's kind of really just vague, that they don't really give you a lot of detail, just saying that they're going to announce, or talk about stuff that's coming up. And that's pretty much all it says. So my guess is if we get anything juicy, which I'm not really counting on, but if we do, my guess is it's probably going to be out of that particular one. Who knows? Disney and Lucasfilm are real sneaky. They'll throw something up and say, oh, we're just going to talk about women in the galaxy. And next thing you know, they're going to say, we're talking about women in the galaxy. And these women are also, the writers are now working on these new novels, or this director is now taking over. So they kind of embed those hidden stories in there as usual. So, I mean, who knows? Maybe we'll get something out of it. But based on what I'm seeing here, it doesn't look like we'll get too much.
Right. I know people
anything jump out for you?
People are chomping at the bit for Delilah Dawson to be announced to be doing something new. Or several things new all at the same time. And of course, Amy Ratcliffe's got a book coming out. So that's exciting, and we've seen some of the pre-art there, and
the artwork.
That's pretty encouraging. So I think we will continue to see more of that, and hopefully there's an interesting panel about what's going into that. And it kind of looks like maybe we'll get something like that. So I'm interested in that. The Star Wars Stories one is an interesting one too, because the fans are the spotlight now, and some of these are pretty well-known people. Like most people know. If they don't know the name Albert Johnson, they know about his daughter, Katie, and R2-KT. So most everybody has seen the pink R2-D2, right? And so that's to have the spotlight on the fans is something unique, and I think something interesting and fun that we can finally see what they have. And the first video is already out there. It's about 11 minutes long, and it's worth a watch. It's kind of very documentary stylish.
Yep. And we'll come back obviously next week, and hopefully we'll have some stuff to talk about in the news section based on what we're seeing here. So with that, we will be right back.
You know what's not smart? Making the lottery the centerpiece of your retirement plan. But you know what is smart? Going to ZipRecruiter.com/Cantina to hire the right person. ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on candidates finding you. It finds them for you. Its powerful matching technology scans thousands of resumes, identifies people with the right skills, education, and experience for your job, and actively invites them to apply, so you get qualified candidates fast. That's why ZipRecruiter is rated #1 by employers in the U.S. And right now, my listeners can try ZipRecruiter for free at this exclusive web address, ZipRecruiter.com/Cantina. That's ZipRecruiter.com/Cantina. And once again, that's ZipRecruiter.com/Cantina. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire.
All right, let's get into the main show. And so we're talking everything about the novel. So we did a number of shows on Han Solo, the movie. We did a lot of character breakdowns and we had one particular show where we did some questions and Q&A thing from some of the listeners, and all that was really good. And it's really cool because I think if I could just editorialize some of this just very quickly, when we were talking about the novel, when we first announced that, on the show that the novel was coming out and it was going to be called Expanded Edition, we kind of threw out some speculations about what maybe we would see. I think you and I both had some ideas about what we wanted to see. And I have to say, some of this stuff kind of came to fruition. I think we got some of the things we wanted. Right. And there were certainly some things I was not expecting to get, particularly the very ending, which, well, no, we did talk about it. But anyways, there was a lot of just as a general kind of first impression of the novel, there was a lot of good stuff here. Like I didn't have any high expectations going into the novel. I thought it would just kind of be a typical Star Wars novelization where you get some additional context that's really not really material, doesn't have a lot of weight. And I was very surprised. There was some stuff in here, I think, more than before, and I can't attribute that to whether it was Mur Lafferty and what she was doing or what she was able to convince Lucasfilm or whoever the powers that be to allow her to get into have some more creativity with it all, or if it was just the fact that it was a solo Star Wars story and they'd already taken a chance, they already rolled the, no pun intended, the dice, and this was because of the character, because of the movie and what they were trying to do with the movie. It really did kind of open up a lot of room there for creators like Mur Lafferty or the directors and the writers and all that to kind of have some liberties there, because this was a very well established character and we already knew what things were going to be like. So they had a lot of room and flexibility to play around with that. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was a combination of both. Maybe it was neither. But I just felt like there was a lot of stuff here that I was very, very pleasantly surprised with. Did you get the same impression reading the book?
I did. And what I liked about it, it was very natural the way that it was included. It wasn't like with Last Jedi novelization, we had like blocks of scenes that were brand new and introduced. And there wasn't a lot of connected tissue at times for those, like the dream sequence, right? It just kind of happened, right? But with this book, we had a really nice segue into these different stories, like the Val story or a little bit of the backstory on Qi'ra we'll talk about. And that's what I liked about it, is that sometimes it was subtle. It did like it did what traditionally the books can do for movies, where they give you insight into the character's head that you can't necessarily get all out on screen and have a ton of exposition and dialogue, because it just clutters things up and slows it down and it's not natural. But here you get those very bookish, novelish type of, thought bubbles, if you will, which I think Mur Lafferty did a really great job. And overall, this was a very enjoyable book. I really only had a couple of very, very minor nitpicks with it overall, but very enjoyable. And I really enjoy how she really made these scenes, like really filled out the scene. And what was surprising about this was how much buildup there was. And then the finish was actually, I felt like the finish was almost too short, because the whole buildup, and I kept looking, I was listening to the audiobook and I kept looking at the timer, and I started getting to the last couple hours of the book. And I'm like, we are nowhere near the end, No, I know how the story ends, and it doesn't, we've got a ways to go.
You did the audiobook. I do the normal, like I don't know what you call it, normal reading, read the novels itself. But I felt the same way. Like I had the exact same impression, because I'm flipping through this thing and I'm like already 3/4. Well, it felt like I was 3/4 of the way through, and there wasn't much book left. And I was like, there's a lot of that still has to happen. And it did, and it didn't feel rushed. And it was just so fast paced. Like it very much captured the feeling of the movie. But I will say, and I don't want to steal the thunder because we're going to talk about that later, but like the mall scene, like when they were in the mall itself, there was a lot more. It was more intense for me in the novel than it was in the book. And for like a Star Wars movie, you'd almost feel like that would be the inverse, because of the quality of the special effects and the pacing and editing and all that. But it actually felt like it was more intense for me reading the novel. I got more out of that, and we can talk about those finer moments a little bit later. But yeah, it was lightning fast the way it ended. And then of course the epilogue, which was great. So yeah, kudos to her for doing this. I don't know, I'd looked into, after I was done reading, I was like, wow, I had never really even heard of her. Looked back and went and looked at some of the other stuff. She's really
a podcaster.
I won't say shit. Yeah, she's a podcaster, right? She's done some other novels and stuff, but I mean, she's great. Get her more Star Wars stuff, whatever it is. I don't know how this works. I don't know if they, put her, or they pair somebody up with a novelization first to kind of test the waters, see how things go, and then if that works, and they, maybe they extend that out a little bit further, give her some more creativity. But I'm done. I'm sold. Let her go create something now, for all I care. I thought she did a great job with this one.
I agree with you.
All right, well, let's get into the characters. So the way we're going to approach this is really, we won't go through the novel in any kind of serial form, but maybe just touch on the characters themselves and maybe some of the better, or I shouldn't say better, but some of the more memorable moments that we got from the novel. And some of this, I think, is a mixture of the things we've already discussed, some of the moments you've already seen in the movie, and some of it obviously is stuff that was exclusive to the novel itself and in the expanded edition.
Right.
So before we go any further, of course, this is a spoiler type show. So if you've not read the novel and you don't want to be spoiled, turn it off and come back when you're done, or tune into the next episode. So sorry, you were going to say something before we start?
I'm ready to go.
Oh, okay. All right, let's do this. So we'll start off with, I guess we'll start off with Han. So, and right from the very beginning, in the prologue, what is it? Prologue. The prologue. Sorry, I was thinking of Pre-Vizsla. We were talking about him before coming on there. Prologue. We immediately start off with Han, and we get some more background on how he comes to have that vial of the coaxium that we see in the opening parts of the movie. And this was a really interesting scene. Like the whole beginning, I thought was pretty good. It at least got me going. It captured me. I got a good sense of Han, and throughout, really. I don't want to. We'll come back in a second, but I thought Han's character to me was a little bit different. Maybe definitely more fleshed out in the novel, which you would expect.
Right.
But from the beginning, he's in this situation where he's got I think it's a total of 6 vials, and he's trying to sell these vials to these other gangsters or whatever, and he is trying to shortchange them. Like he ends up putting one of the vials in his pocket, and then he tries to sell, a lesser amount. So, and I couldn't help myself, Jonesy. I went and did the math, right? So he was selling 7 of them for 41,000 credits.
Right.
Or he was after he pocketed one of them, he had 6 left, and then he makes an offer for those 6 for 20,000. Yeah. And so this was like, wait, hold on. So when I did the math, at 7, it's 5,857 for each vial, or for 6 at 20,000, it's only 3,333. So it was like, wait a minute. So this guy was going to shortchange Lady Proxima. Like he was going to come back with a lot less credits than he was. And and they don't really get into this, but I thought this was a good, another way of that. I think Mur Lafferty in really the movie did a good job of explaining Han's character and just how he thinks at this time. And it's really not that different from what we see later on when he's more mature Han. But man, he's just like rolling off. He's doing crazy things and just taking his chance and hoping that things are going to be fine. And he seems to have this positive attitude that, yeah, I'm going to show up with a lot less credits by the tune of like 21,000, but it'll be fine. I'll things will work out. I'll figure out a way. It's all going to be fine. We're all fine here. How are you? Sorry. So I know I kind of went on there for a little bit, but did that scene, what did you get from the beginning, I guess, with him?
Well, yeah, it was the scene I didn't know that I was interested in seeing, or listening to, I guess. But I was kind of glad for it because it gives you a little bit of that background. It's a way to guide you into the novel a little bit and guide you into the story. I think for the movie, it works to just, show up and get towards the action type of sequences.
Yeah.
And you don't necessarily need all of this stuff. But I liked it because it gives you this idea of how it came to it. Like you said, the pricing, though, seems a little off. If we were doing, over 5,000 per vial, but then when they're in the speeder, they're talking that it's somewhere between probably 600 and 1,000 credits, something like that. So
yeah, that I actually didn't even think about that.
Star
You're
Wars
right. I never
is
went
at
back.
play here. So,
right.
But it was a fun sequence. It was good to see him roughed up, and again, he's just shooting off the hip again. He thinks he's smarter than probably he really is. And of course, he ends up losing. This is kind of what we talked about this. Like at times, Han Solo is a bit of a loser, right? And this is one of those times where he is definitely lost. And I don't know, but then he's getting away from it, and he actually starts feeling better about himself. It's really odd. Like his confidence is just never ending, and you start to get that very, very quickly. But what I really liked about it, though, was as he's on the way back, he has a lot of. He talks about Qi'ra, and he starts to have doubts about Qi'ra. And in particular, he has the speeder, he has the M68, he stole it from this gang, right? And he has the opportunity to just bail at that point. He has a way out. He doesn't have much of a plan besides that. But then he's like, I can't abandon Qi'ra. but he's not entirely sure that she would do the same for him, that, she would stay.
Right.
And so you get this little bit of uncertainty between the characters already, that there's something there already, that they're not necessarily totally committed to one another, even though they have a lot of commitment to each other. There's always something between them.
Yeah, and so just if I could real quick with Qi'ra, we get a confirmation of that in the novel.
Right.
There's a moment there where, when Han tucks that vial, gives a vial to her, she actually has a moment where she's considering like, I could just leave and use this money and, leave, you never come back kind of thing. And that seems to be part of her character, obviously, right? She's always trying to think about whether or not she can leave and all that. We'll get in a second, but yeah, there's almost we're kind of touching on something else that I had for Han, and I don't have it in the show notes really, but it just came to me right now. His death now for me is different after reading the novel, because I really do feel I feel differently about him, at least at this young age, just in how blindly innocent he is and how blindly hopeful and how just dumb luck founded he is. And that is his character. It's very endearing. He's got a very big heart, a big sweetheart. And that's why, in that line of, I know who you really are. You're the good guy. And that's really it. He is really a really good guy. And, there's still more that's going to play on. I think we talked about that when we were talking about the movie at the very end and wrapping up, that there's probably other things that are going to start, jading him, making it a little bit more rough around the edges, that kind of thing. But, given what I've gotten from the novel and now from the movie, yeah, his death is kind of sad, especially when you think about somebody like Kylo Ren and what he must be thinking about his son and what his son's been through, and reflecting back on his own personal bringing up and all of that. It's just a even bigger tragedy, bigger loss, I think, for me. So, but yeah, it's a good point about Qi'ra. But one of the cool things that was really neat, we talked about this in the review show that we did for the movie. We were really hoping that we would see some more of this Imperial Navy stuff, which we didn't get a whole lot of. We got, I think, a moment of him flying through the air, landing in the mud on Minbom, and that was pretty much it after he signed up for the Navy. But in the book, we got a lot more, and it was very surprising. So we find out that he was part of Onyx Squad, which was, I think they were TIE infiltrators.
Right.
And he was, his call sign was Onyx 9. And he actually had a friend. He's got some good comments in there where he's kind of talking about how most people have just he kept one. That's up. Right. Yeah. What most people were catching on, that being around this guy was fire, right? It was dangerous because he was kind of a maverick. He was a rogue, but it was cool because the Imperial officers acknowledged that this guy's flight record and the way his innovative problem solving skills were just amazing, impeccable, beyond anything they'd ever seen. But he was just so reckless and irresponsible that they were always kind of torn between whether or not to keep him flying, or put him down on infantry troop type things work. So, and then he gets in this situation where there's the final situation is we hear that he was a rogue and all that. We know he got kicked out of the Navy, so to speak, but. We do get to find out that what really had happened was they were in some kind of a dogfight, and one of the guy, Juri, I think it was his name, Onyx 2 was his friend, right? And he was in danger at one point, and Han made the decision to break off from, his flight pattern or whatever,
the formation,
and go rescue this guy. So his formation, thank you. Yeah. So he ends up saving this person against the orders of his officers and all of that. So again, it's showing his heart. It's showing his ability to kind of go against the grain and not necessarily listening to orders and all that. But those are really good moments. And I was not expecting that we would get, I guess, that level of detail. I thought it would be just a quick passage of, maybe they just mentioned that he did something, but there was quite a bit there for it.
Yeah, this was something that we wanted quite a bit of, and I think we were definitely missing from the movie. And I was glad we got it. And I'm with you. I was a little surprised with how much we got, and that this was an extended sequence that we got to see basically his trial too with the Commodore, and we got to see the Empire's perspective. We kind of know the Empire's perspective already, but it was confirmation that they don't value creative thinking at all. Like, you are going to follow these orders. And we talked a lot about this with like Rex too, right? But you're going to follow these orders and you're going to do what needs to be done without question. They don't want people who think for themselves. They want people who stick to the plan and are committed to what they are told to do. And they need people who follow orders. And clearly Han's not that type of guy. And he's actively, I think, showing people up too a lot of the times is what it sounds like. But what was a little funny though was they said that he was responsible for maybe a second crash of an aircraft. And the Commodore was just beside himself. He's like, what do you mean? How can you maybe be responsible for that? And it was because
he said one, possibly two destroyed fighters,
right? Because others were starting to try to mimic what he's doing, and they just can't because they don't have his skill. And I think they specifically called out his reaction time. And but those were great, funny moments where you can see what it is. But even in his, I guess it's kind of like a court martialing of sorts. Han still didn't get it. Like he's like, okay, well, all right, I'm being punished, but how long until I get back up in the air? When can I start flying again?
Right.
And then we cut to the scene that we've all seen where he goes flying and Mimban and somehow survives. But it was just, he still just doesn't get it. He's a stupid kid,
And there was we did get Tag and Bink as well. So officially now.
And we added one more origin story to the Solo.
So do you remember when we did the final hype show for Solo? There was a question. It was Utini. I went and looked it up. So Utini asked a question about what was too much,
right?
In terms of origins, and I think you echoed this as well. But what I'd said was, if we get like why the pants have red stripes or why he has those particular boots, and I even said the scar. I said his chin, meaning his chin scar. I felt like that was going to be too much, and lo and behold, we got it. But did you feel like it was too much? The way it was subtle.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't so like, they didn't mention it. They just said the gash on his chin, and that was kind of it. So they alluded to the fact that that's where it was, but did you feel like it was too much? Did they jump the shark with this one?
No, I agree with you. It was subtle. I don't think it was too much. And again, we felt this way with the movie in general. It's okay if they want to introduce these things. It's more of how are you going to do it and how big of a deal are you going to make of it? And this was just very much part of the crash. It would have fit any story for any character to be stitched up, right? And so it is another origin story. It might be too much for some people, but I think I agree with you. I think it was done in a way that is easy to work into the book. It doesn't take away from anything, and it doesn't distract you from anything. And actually, I missed it the first time through. Again, I'm listening in the car, so I'm not always kind of completely focused on the audiobook. I am focused on driving sometimes. But
hope so.
Right. So I started listening to the book a second time and then caught it more clearly. And I remembered it then. It just didn't stick with me for some reason. But yeah, so it was subtle enough to where it didn't really resonate with me the first time, and I didn't miss it, but it didn't stick.
Yeah. I think when the minute I got to that part, I did an eye rolling kind of thing, like, oh great, here we go. And then it was over. It was like, oh
yeah, they moved on.
Yeah. It wasn't so bad. They moved on. Yeah, it wasn't. So yeah, that was an interesting moment. And then I guess we should say, just for the full context, that scar, when we mentioned earlier that he was saving Onyx too, he kind of ends up after he saves his buddy, he basically lands I guess you could call it a landing since he walked away from it, but he lands his ship in the hangar, and as part of the crash and the way it came down as hard as it did, he bumped the steering wheel handlebars, whatever it is that he's using. And that's what gave him.
The other thing we got too was we got a little bit of backstory about why he's so abrasive with droids. And because he had a droid on the ship that just kept nagging at him, he ended up having to turn it off. But he just a few sentences of he didn't grow up with droids. Clearly, they didn't have droids in the house, and the White Worms didn't have droids, and so they weren't second nature to him. And so he doesn't know how to interact with them, and he doesn't get it for the most part. And they just kind of get in the way.
In fact, I think. Yeah, I think he said he had a disdain for the ship's computer, which was MGK 300, and he was fighting that computer or the ship the entire time in that battle. Right. So, but yeah, no, good point. Forgot all about that one. Anything else for Han? I want to make sure we get through everybody here.
Yeah, we've got several key characters here that really had a lot. So let's go on to Qi'ra then.
All right, yeah, Qi'ra. So yeah, we kind of talked about her. She had the moment where she could have left him, and it definitely sounded like, and again, this is more of her character there's more of her character where she's constantly feeling conflicted. Like in a lot of the book, I didn't get this in the movie so much, but in a lot of the book, I really felt like she felt as though she couldn't get away, but she was okay with that, right? Like she was comfortable with it. And part of that is Dryden Voss and what he was proposing to her and how he got her to where she is. And we get a lot more of that than in the novel than we did in the movie, obviously. But it always felt like she had mixed feelings about whether, she was the poor soul that couldn't get away, but yet she seemed like she did have opportunities, one, to get away, but there are other times when you kind of felt like she maybe had an opportunity to take Dryden Voss out and she didn't. Right. So it never really, it was a very weird dynamic for her. Like I couldn't really put my finger on whether or not she was okay with the fact that she felt like she couldn't get away. Like that was the comfortable part for her, being confined, being a slave, being, feeling like, oh, this is just my lot in life, right? She felt like it seemed like she was reserved. She had reserved herself to, that's just who she is and that's what she's always going to be. And we kind of get some of that when she's talking to Han about like, hey, you don't know anything about me. You don't know anything about, what's going on here. That was kind of an indirect thing as well. Right. But anything, I guess, big like that other than for Qi'ra?
We saw the building blocks happening all the way back even to, they had a fish market sequence. And you had this moment where she recalls seeing this fish. I think she had a fine fish one time, and she yearns for that type of lifestyle. So when we flash forward to Dryden Voss and his proposal to her, not marriage, but a proposal of basically working for him instead of killing everybody and trying to escape all the time, which he's about at wit's end with her about. But he identifies that and starts to say, you can enjoy these finer things. You don't have to be a slave. Yes, you are a slave. He just lays it out there, but you could be so much more. And he wants to talk about potential. But it appeals to that because we saw that in the fish market that she does crave some of these finer things. She doesn't want to keep dressing like she does. She doesn't want to smell like she does. And, she's trying to do some of that within the White Worms, because we get a little dialogue with what's her name? the queen. Proxima? Lady Proxima, sorry. And, she says, you've worked your ways up, don't throw everything away. But she's left her no choice to then sell her to one slave dealer who ends up giving her and I think trains her up a little bit to sell her to Dryden Voss. But I liked how and again, it was all very subtle and it was very, connected, that these little subtle hints along the way you start to pick up. And again, you see this doubt and not quite sure that she's really committed to Han the whole time. And, there is a sense of, responsibility for one another. I owe him type of thing, because
it was almost like this.
Because he sacrificed basically himself, to try to save both of them.
It was almost kind of like this. I mean, indentured servitude is perverse in itself, right? But it was a form of that was a little bit different as well. She make no mistake about it. She knew she was Dryden's property, but again, she had a lot of liberty there. Like, she wasn't the normal slave. She was allowed to have these finer things in life, whether it was clothing, food, power, right? All these things that she had wanted. She was basically just chained, a restraining bolt, which we'll talk about in a second, because in fact, we can go there now. And this is one thing that really, for me, and I may be seeing too much into this with the novel, but there was a turning point for me, I think, that I got in the novel that I did not get in the movie. And it was when L3 and Qi'ra were on the Millennium Falcon. There's a great scene in there where they're kind of talking back and forth. And it's a scene where, it's the same scene in the movie that where she, they're talking about how is that even possible, when they're talking about, possibly sex or whatever, love between between Lando and L3. It's that same kind of scene, but there's a lot more here. Right. But there is one moment in there where we get, and we'll come back to L3's backstory, but L3's kind of going through her backstory. In that scene, when she's talking about her L3's backstory, just before that is the scene where we get a lot of this backstory on Qi'ra and what she was going through. And it felt weird that they were putting those two together. But when I was done reading the L3 backstory and how she had a restraining bolt, she felt liberated, and what she ended up doing, what she ended up doing to get away and all that. It seemed like to me there was like this turning point. Like, again, she probably had moments in there where she could have left Dryden. She probably could have left that lifestyle and just gotten away, and she never did it. But it felt like this was the catalyst right here. This was after seeing L3, because you have a robot or a droid, sorry, Star Wars fans, but you have a droid that was able to liberate herself. And I think for me, I took away from that Qi'ra saw that as, well, if she can do it, certainly I can. I think it at least put the bug in her ear that later on, when we see her, take out Dryden, that was kind of it. But it's a great, great little moment between both of them. I really like that whole scene. It's actually my second favorite scene from the novel itself.
I liked how L3
as well.
I liked how she kept pressing it, though. What is your restraining bolt?
Yeah. And
Qi'ra either couldn't or just didn't answer the question. And I believe L3 asked it twice. And it was such a poignant question. What's your, what is holding you back?
This is, what if your restraining bolt was removed, is what she said.
Right.
Yeah.
And then she asked her, what is it? And she just couldn't answer it, or she didn't answer it. I mean, I'm assuming it's Dryden Voss, but it's got to be bigger than him too, because even with him out of the way, you're always reporting to someone, clearly.
Yeah, it was a good moment. So going back to Qi'ra again, you had asked the question whether or not there was any resentment there with Han. I think there was, and I think it kind of bubbled up, eventually. She was pretty cool and calm about it when she was talking to Han early on, right after they had first met up again, that, hey, no big deal. You had to leave. It was best for you. But I feel like there was some resentment there. Was there anything
yeah, when she was having the showdown with Voss, it came out. I mean, Han wasn't in danger, but you get this sense. I mean, Lafferty did a great job of painting this picture that there was clearly resentment over him leaving her. And there was anger, and she was, it was finally kind of bubbling up and coming out a little bit, even though she knows that there wasn't another choice. It doesn't matter, right? You can still be hurt by it and feel abandoned, and you had to suffer for years, and to get where you're at now, and only for him to kind of waltz back in and kind of think everything's fine and everything's going to go back to the way it was. And he just views him as this naive child at times. And I mean, she's not totally wrong, but I definitely see resentment there. I think that was painted very, very clearly. Yeah.
There was a scene. So let's fast forward later on where she meets up with Maul, and it was in the novel. It's pretty clear that this was the first time she had. In fact, the quote is she had never seen his face. Right. So, my guess is she may have known about him. At least maybe a name. Maybe she heard him at some point, but definitely this is the first time she had ever seen Maul on the little holovid there.
Right.
Had anything else? There really wasn't much though in that scene.
There wasn't much.
It was pretty much right from the movie, I guess.
Yeah, it was. And that was about it. It did seem like there was a line or two in there that definitely suggested that they knew each other or they knew of each other. So not the first time she's seen him, but definitely the first time she's addressed him.
And she seemed to be well aware of Force users. I think she mentions that when he ignites a lightsaber, that she knows that was something that was used by either the Jedi or the Sith.
Right.
So somewhere in her study, she came across that knowledge.
Yeah, and I imagine that was with the Teras Kasi training. That had to have.
Yeah, we'll come back to that.
Yeah, I imagine that would have come up during that training.
I think overall, she really felt it. Again, it did feel like she was kind of playing the long game at times, and I don't know, she kind of went back and forth. And then not in a bad way. I really feel like her, and I think we said this when we did the Qi'ra episode. She's a very dynamic character. She's super complex, depending, with everything that's going on and everything that's happening to her. And I don't think I got any kind of different opinion after reading the novel. It felt like at times she had the long game mind. She was more tactical when she needed to be. I think she had more. She definitely had more strategic views in terms of what she was trying to do with her life and all of that. But it just felt like she was never really in control. And I don't know if she ever felt like she was in control of any of it at any point. So can we talk about Teras Kasi though?
Sure.
Because there was one moment in here where it was right after they were leaving Kessel and they were about to blast off. And she goes into suddenly, and this isn't the first time at this point in the novel where she's mentioned Teras Kasi. It's come up a few times, and there's a scene when they get on Kessel where she disarms a person and L3's freaking out and amazed at how well she does and all that. So we definitely get a good sense that, again, Dryden Voss trained her. She's a black belt, for lack of a better term. But yeah, she gets into this. There's a moment in there where she mentions that there's this electrical charge on her skin, and she kind of feels this presence. And the presence is, we come to find out, is the aboleth or whatever it is, the mall monster.
Right.
But they don't. When I was reading that, I thought she was going into this whole thing about that Qi'ra was suddenly going to be like force sensitive, and it's quite the contrary. In fact, I think in the novel it says that she's not force sensitive. I mean, I think she even explicitly calls it out and says that she's not. But there is a moment in there where they mention that there is something about Terraskasi that gives her this like enhanced sense, or this sixth sense, if you will, and that the reason why is because it was created to counter the Jedi, right?
Yeah, you have this sixth sense of anticipation, basically.
Yeah, and so she could feel the presence of something else. She didn't know what it was, right? When they were blasting off, and it was interesting though. I don't know. I couldn't put my finger on. I mean, it was a cool part. Don't get me wrong, but it just felt like, I don't know if they were leading up to something, or if this was something that that's really going to play a big part. I can tell you right now, having played the game on the PS1 back in the 90s, I never would have thought that we would get this much Terraskasi in Star Wars ever. But yet here it is. It's like mentioned throughout the novel, and there's a scene where we get a little bit more about what you can do with it. So I don't know. It was a cool little moment there with her, and explaining her ability and her how far she's come to master all of that as well.
It was nice getting a little flavor of what that training looks like as well.
Let's talk about Chewie.
Yeah, Chewie stayed pretty true to the movie for the most part.
Yeah. I would agree. I mean, he had two moments. So we got more on Kashyyyk and what we would see eventually, in Aftermath, Life Debt,
right?
Which I think was like 15 years ish later. There was, but I thought what was interesting though is he had been a slave for so long that the fact that he was able to really befriend Han the way he did, in the manner that he did, and as quickly as he did, I thought that said a lot about their relationship and what he thought of Han. Because at that point, I mean, he'd been enslaved for so long. I mean, he was basically being tortured. We find out they were not giving him food for a number. I think they said it in the novel, in the movie as well, that they hadn't fed Chewie for some time when he's down in the pit. We did get confirmation that he doesn't eat humans. That was kind of cool. I never really thought Wookiees would do that unless they really had to. In fact, I think he mentions that he wasn't.
Yeah, right. He wasn't that hungry, right?
Yeah. But anyways, given his perspective on humans, I guess at that point in his life, it was really cool that he was able to befriend Han the way he did. So I think that was kind of neat.
And again, it did take him by surprise when Han started speaking, Shriwook.
Oh yeah. And did he do that in the novel, or in the audiobook? Did Thompson get into all that?
Yes, and we'll talk about that in my recap. Well, I want to talk about Mark. I always like to talk about Mark Thompson with the audiobook, so we'll get to him here in a few minutes.
All right.
But yes, he did that.
There was another scene. Yeah, okay. Interesting. There was another scene later on that we didn't get in the movie and it was actually a pretty funny moment where, we know that he took the shower with Han to get the initial layer of mud off, but much like, all other furry animals, they've got an undercoat, and that mud never came off. And so later on, when he's on the Falcon, he jumps into Lando's shower, and not only does he clog the drain, destroy it. I mean, there's like hair. The way she describes it is just disgusting. That there's after Lando walks in after Chewbacca's taken a second shower, but then he ends up using a lot of his product, his like really expensive hair products. And detanglers, yes. Personal products. And I don't know. It was just a funny scene. It was not expected. It was definitely, Star Wars comedy, but it didn't go too far, right? It wasn't like, sight gags and all that. So, but it was. I
think one of the things that helps you do is it helps give you this concept of time, which we don't usually get with Star Wars while they're in hyperspace. They're in hyperspace and then they're out of hyperspace. Yep. This actually gave a lot of context around how long they were on this trip. It was hours, at least it was at least hours. So it just gave you a little bit of context, which we don't get very often, I thought that was kind of nice.
That was pretty much it. Well, there was another part in there with Corso, but we'll come back to Corso in a second because that was kind of the muscle of Beckett's crew later. But let's talk about Lando, L3, the Falcon. We get L3's backstory. It wasn't a whole lot, but we come to find out she was an astromech droid. She gave herself a bipedal body. She, upgraded her memory, downloaded a bunch of star maps, and then she went out as a contractor, which I thought was hilarious.
Right.
That she was a free contractor, trying to find somebody that needed her skills, which were, navigation, astronavigation, that kind of thing. And it sounded like she had a hard time finding work. And anytime she did, she made this, it was kind of dark, but she made a comment about how they were always trying to put a restraining bolt on her. And that, it didn't say it, but it sounded like she killed some of them. And she said they made awful noises.
Yeah, breaking bones.
They said that she was yeah. So yeah, I don't know if it could be that she was just breaking bones or whatever, but it was dark, like that, she went that far to protect her freedom.
Right. Yeah, we find out why she was able to do all that was because her owner accidentally left the restraining bolt off of her one night. And so she basically did all that in one evening. But she said she could have built a droid army. There were so many spare parts there that she could have built a massive army if she had more time. But she was done. She was out.
And eventually she runs across Lando, who, takes her in and
best decision he ever made.
Just like a... Right. She makes a comment to that. That's the best decision he ever made. And then she also says that Lando finds human females to sate his desire for her. She's a character for sure. And then we get to the integration with the Falcon, which you get a lot more here, guys. If you've not had it, this is another one of the really cool moments that I was not expecting. I thought it'd be another one. Okay, she's now part of the Falcon or whatever that line was from the movie. And no, we get like her perspective or her mental perspective on what all is happening. And we get the conversation between her and the Falcon in what we're told is binary. But all of that whole part of it, and it doesn't end there. Like even when that first happens, you're like, oh, this is kind of cool. And then it goes away, it goes back to the, what else is going on in the story. And then they come back to it like 2 or 3 more times later in the novel. So it's not just one little snippet of her talking to the Falcon. It's the whole piece, that whole transition of her becoming one, we are one kind of thing, that we get in it. Did you enjoy that?
I did. It was a little, I had a hard time reconciling the conversation she had with the Falcon. And then when she reaches out to Lando and is able to have that last conversation with him, when she's talking with the Falcon, the Falcon needs her to accept it so they can integrate. So she feels like or at the end of the day, she feels like she's being tricked, but she also knows that this is the only way and it's a way that she can keep contributing. But when she talks to Lando, she's kind of guilting him, like, how did you let this happen to me? Fix me. And he's responding back, he just can't, and she's got access to all the cameras in the Falcon, which I thought was a little creepy. But,
right.
But at the same time, she could see the damage of her body, and it was just irreparable. And there was no way that that she could come back from that. And this was the only way that he could save her. And you could feel I could sense the emotion in the book or in the audiobook. And Mark Thompson did a really great job of that. But I think it probably read pretty well too, didn't it? Yeah,
no, it was great. All of this was like, I honestly copied a whole bunch of lines just right out of the novel because they were really touching, especially. So when she first is talking to the Falcon, and the Falcon's, propositioning her to kind of become one, her response is ridiculous. And she says, and be a slave inside a ship forever? No, thank you. Like, this is exactly what she does not want. And I never got a really good sense of whether, she accepted it. Well, her exact words were, this was tolerable. Right. She eventually acquiesces and decides that, okay, this is, it's whether the choice being be nothing, don't be alive at all, or be whatever this new thing is, she ends up kind of, I guess, acquiescing to that and deciding that's fine. I'll just do it. But she calls it tolerable. She doesn't say it's fine, doesn't say it's great. She's just, it's tolerable. Right. But yeah, in the novel, it was the way it read, a lot of that was just great stuff.
Well, and we got really great feedback, though, that the Falcon liked Han and Chewbacca and really liked Chewie. It sensed that Chewie cared and genuinely wanted, he was interested in the ship and wanted to take care of it. And it liked Han. And we find out that Han was actually growing on L3 a little bit too. And so when we get the comments from Han saying that, it's mutual, trust me, when I think Lando says, you've really got it bad for the Falcon, it's kind of true. And he kind of knows it's true.
Right.
So it was just kind of interesting seeing that side but it's kind of funny. It was really Chewbacca, I think, that sealed the deal for the Falcon, because he just had such caring for the ship, even in a short period of time with it, and knew what he was doing too, and he was competent.
Yeah, it was that technical affinity that we've always known Chewbacca to have that kind of appealed to, L3, the Falcon, both, whatever. Yeah, and when they finally became, the very last line, I think it says, "We are something different now, not just the Falcon, not just L3, we are new," is the line. I kept saying one, but it says "we are new." Yeah,
that part I wasn't sure what to make of that, because I thought at one point it was also saying that now it was christened the Millennium Falcon, but earlier in the book it was called the Millennium Falcon too. So I guess I misheard it or misread that. So I'm not totally sure what that was, but it was around that new comment.
We got definitely some grief from Lando. Like, you can tell he was going through a lot of that grief. It hit him harder, I think, in the novel than in the movie. Although I think in the movie we got a pretty good sense, especially when she went down when they were on Kessel, and then what he was trying to go through when he was trying to plug her in and all that. I mean, it looked like basically somebody was asking him to do a lobotomy on a corpse of somebody that he loved, and we got that sense in the novel as well. So he definitely was grieving from that point on.
I still can't understand why he continues to gamble this ship away, though.
That's a good question. I don't know either, and it's in the way it read. I never got a sense of like he was torn by that decision to again put the ship on in Lux, in fate. And luck of the dice, or draw the cards, or whatever. But yeah, that's a good question.
I think it speaks to Lando's.
He loved her that much.
I think it speaks to Lando's character a little bit, though, of being the gambler, and he's got this supreme confidence as well. And he never really felt he was in danger, right? He had the Psylop up his sleeve, so he was good to go. And so I think maybe that was part of it, but still, why do you even chance it?
Yeah, I don't know.
But the one thing I thought was really cool, though, is that we do get a few lines that the coaxium has had a longer term lasting impact on the Falcon, which has made it faster, which I thought was really awesome. I really liked that. Just that little snippet there is like, yeah, this ship is not only special because it's, the YT-1300s are great, and it's all of these enhancements that Lando's done, but now it's in a very unique way, very different than any ship in the galaxy. And it makes it just that much more special in general. So I really liked getting that little flavor too. I thought that was important to get.
Yeah, and I see it as really, there's kind of three things coming together all at once. You've got the coaxium now in the system, so to speak. Then you've got L3 now as part of that with the Millennium Falcon. And then you've just got this symbiotic relationship between Han, with his skills and what they've talked about in the novel and what we see in the movie. The three of those, well, then you throw in Chewie as well. You might as well, right? So you get all four of those together. And yeah, that ship is very different at the very end of the novel, at the very end of the movie, than it was coming into either one of those. So pretty cool. Definitely gives the Falcon a lot more character now.
I was very pleased with the Falcon aspect of this book. Thought that was really great.
Yeah, no, they did a good service to it for sure. Quickly with Beckett and the crew, we did learn about Corso, so that was the muscle of his team prior to Chewie, and we kind of get the sense why they're. I think in the movie, and I'm conflating probably the two now, but I could have sworn in the movie, Beckett mentions about, or maybe it was one of them mentions, hey, that's a Wookiee, we could use him, right?
Right.
And come to find out, they had again somebody named Corso who was the heavy person, so to speak, in the movie, and I think he ended up dying.
Right. Yeah. He he had a big, heavy, rotating gun. And I think it was Rio in both the book and the movie, I think, said it, that they could really use the muscle. And this is when they were debating whether or not they were going to pick up Han and Chewie. And so
it almost felt like they went for Chewie because they needed him. And they were like, okay, well, we'll take the kid too, since they're together and Jane.
Yeah, Beckett liked his tenacity for the most part. But yeah, Chewie's really the one that got them signed up.
Yeah, exactly. And then we had Val, which they didn't really have a lot of time, even in the novel, to do much with her. But we got a couple things when we found out that this was supposed to be their last mission together, Val and Beckett, and they were going to go retire on Vandalore or wherever that planet was once they were done. You had in there, Jonesy was wrong. Val came first, then Rio. So I think we talked about. I think we threw the question out there: who did Beckett know longer,
Right.
Rio versus Val?
Yeah, they cleared that up. So I was wrong.
Yeah, because we know that they were. Yeah, we knew they were together when they caught Rio trying to steal Beckett's speeder,
Right.
and that's how Rio came into the group, which was interesting.
And she didn't like him at first either. So that was more fuel to get Han into the group.
And then we get this. This is the weird one. I don't know if it's weird, but I didn't know how to imagine this because I didn't get too much into the detail of it. But we come to find out that at some point in Beckett's life, some queen of some planet or something decided that was going to be, her husband, her mate, her groom, and Val ends up going and freeing him in combat. I guess like a gladiatorial thing.
Yeah,
and she wins him back.
Yeah, she had to compete in the gladiator arena to win him back. So very peculiar. But yeah, it was like effectively during her death sequence, we get this backstory. But it was touching because it's the moment where he told her, never leave me ever again. And so it was the moment where they cemented their relationship as more than a team, I guess. Yeah,
and you got the sense that Beckett needed her more than Val probably needed him.
Yeah.
Which is probably the case in every husband and wife marriage. We find out she's from Solarine. Do you remember?
I think that was in the what's it called? The official guide.
Oh, was it? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, I didn't read through all of that, but they definitely make confirmation of it here. And the only reason I threw that out and laughed is because that stupid Zero the Hutt. Maybe Solarine. He makes that comment in Clone Wars.
The things you remember, man, it blows my mind.
How can you get that out of your head, that character?
Hey,
yeah. I would say that her death had more weight though too in the novel, especially for Beckett. Like he's just like, beating himself up and literally beats up Han, but yeah, he takes it pretty hard. Yeah, we get a little bit more of that at least. I think we assume that, especially in that opening moment right afterwards when they're on the snow and he's buried her and all of that. Right. But there are a little there's other moments, we won't get into them now, but there's other things that happen that he says and does, reflects on, that kind of thing.
It gets brought up more routinely.
Even after that.
It's just more of the story where it's always lingering and it's not far from the surface. And so any little thing, and it's usually Han doing it because that's what he does. But yeah, it's never far from the surface, and they touch on it more than one time in the book, which I think was nice. It just kept that fresh, that this wasn't that long ago and that he hasn't moved on. This is still going to hang with him for the rest of his life. And then quickly for Beckett, he seemed more lighthearted in the novel than he was in the movie. And I guess maybe just because he had more opportunity to be more lighthearted. And the one moment, I guess the one scene that really comes to mind where this was more evident than ever was in that scene when they're trying to escape the mall. And he's there. It's super intense. They're trying to get away. Things are failing. It's much more intense. There's actually more things that happen that go wrong in that scene. Yeah, that scene was way longer than the movie.
Yeah. But the entire time he's cracking jokes. He's got this he's basically saying, well, it was good knowing you guys and have fun. And I mean, he seems like it's not even fazing him, which I thought was just, it's cool. I like this character. I wouldn't say a lot more because it really wasn't that much more, but he did seem like he was a little bit more lighthearted. He had cracked a little bit more jokes in the novel as well, which maybe I kind of got the sense that was probably Rio in his relationship, or he, pulled some of that from Rio at some point. But there really wasn't any more than we see in the movie with Beckett. Right. And then the other thing that finally, before we get into Enfys Nest, but Dryden and the taxidermist, do you remember this part where?
Yeah, that was creepy. Yeah.
So those I don't know what you would call them.
I don't know what you do either.
Glass cages or whatever. We know there's characters, like there's an Ewok at least that I know that in Dryden's office, and that thing's alive. Like it's not dead.
Yeah, because you could see when Han goes by and notices it like quivers, and then he has that realization, and Qi'ra like recognizes that it finally clicked with him what that was, and that there is a fate worse than death. And that is just downright messed up.
So, yeah, that was weird.
It was, because I didn't I wouldn't have caught that in the movie at all. But man, that was messed up.
All right, let's talk about the very last thing before we. Yeah, right. Moving on. So the book pretty much ends very similar to the movie, in that he wins the Falcon back, and Lando seems pretty okay with it, which though again odd even still. But then we get the epilogue, and this is a really cool scene, and this is something that I think, and I don't remember what episode we were on. It may have been when we were talking about what we wanted to. I think it was when we finally wrapped up all of the Solo coverage, and we were talking about what could be next. And we had mentioned that one of the things that would be cool is what if Enfys Nest and Jyn Erso or Saw Gerrera, because we knew this was around that same time, would get together or have a run-in, some kind of a meeting. And yeah, we got it. And it was really neat. So the way the scene plays out is, she's obviously got her being Enfys Nest has all this coaxium. They make mention that it's enough to power a fleet. And she is meeting Saw Gerrera for the first time. And, Saul comes off the ship. He comes down the plank, and she's standing there. They're kind of going back and forth. And then suddenly there's a noise that's heard behind Saul back up in the ship. And Enfys Nest goes on guard. They put up their blasters, all of her crew, the Cloud Riders. And Saul's like, no, put your weapons down. And it's at that moment that we get a 11-year-old Jyn Erso who comes down out of the ship. And they have this really cool exchange where Jyn is talking to Enfys. And they're talking about whether or not youth is, kind of protects you. Right. Is it just because you're small and because you're young, the Empire is still going to, at some point, probably hurt you. They're not going to, that's not a defense, I think is what they say. But yeah, there's a great line in there where she basically tells Jyn Erso that they're going to underestimate you, make them regret it.
Right.
And it's just a really neat line that foreshadows everything that we see in the
Rogue One.
Rogue One. Thank you very much.
There were a couple of things in there. One was with Saw and Enfys. When you see Enfys, like when we see her on screen and what she tells us and what we know Saw is going to be, those are really at odds with one another. And we already see a little bit of that rub already in this, that she's giving it to him. We don't really know what Saw is doing with it at this point, because this isn't, I guess there is a relationship with the rebellion for a while, right? We get that flavor in Rogue One. So maybe this is going to go and contribute to the rebellion, but we don't exactly know that. But the other thing though is that conversation you just mentioned with Saw and the youth and protection of youth. That leads to why Jyn is so upset with Saw a lot of the time. The abandonment and the way that he treated her and the way that he raised her effectively are harsh ways, because he was trying to do that for her own good, because he knows that the galaxy is going to hell and she's got to be able to handle it and be able to handle herself on her own. And that little nugget of confidence from Enfys Nest as well, I think goes a long way for Jyn as well. It'd be curious if we got another book that referenced that conversation or some impact that it may have had on Jyn. I don't know if we'll get anything like that, but it would be neat to see if some of the Rogue One books were rewritten after Solo, to tie them all together just a little bit. But I thought those were two kind of neat little nuggets to pull out of there. Yeah,
and just to kind of wrap it all up, they after she tells Jyn Erso that they're going to underestimate you, and Jyn replies back, "They," and Enfys says, "Everyone, make them regret it." Her and Enfys Nest and Saul are kind of talking again, and she, I guess, Saw Gerrera basically says that, hey, we're trying to reach the same goal. We may be going about things differently, so that kind of speaks to the partisans and his more, his way of doing things, which we come to find out is not kosher, right? He's kind of doing some shady stuff, but his intent is still the same as maybe somebody like Enfys Nest or the rebels that we see in the original trilogy. But he eventually convinces her that they need to go talk about the coaxium and all that. And so they head up into the ship. And as Enfys Nest is passing Jyn Erso, this 11-year-old girl, she tells Enfys Nest he's going to underestimate you. And I forget the line now, but Enfys Nest has this kind of feeling of hope, for lack of a better term. They don't say that word, but that's essentially what it is. she's very hopeful that people like Jen Erso, this little girl, as wise as she is, as smart as she is, are going to be the next wave of people that are going to, help lead all of the efforts that she's going through right now. So really, really cool moment that I was not expecting to get.
No, this was like your cool post-credit scene type of deal. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So this was a really nice inclusion in the book. And again, these are what the books can do exceptionally well with fun little things like this. And I agree. I think this was a perfect conclusion for the book.
So with that, let's, you want to talk about the audiobook, Mark Thompson's performance? I'm curious as to how it went.
Yeah. Mark Thompson was fantastic as usual. His portrayal of Han and Lando in particular were excellent. And you actually even get these little flavors of when he did I just recently listened to, oh my goodness, what book was it that I just listened to? We just talked about this not too long ago. Last Shot. Sorry. Yeah. So I listened to Last Shot, and the older version of Han and Lando, you still get a flavor of that. So within the audiobook universe, if you will, you still have this very seamless portrayal of these characters, which I thought was really nice. And for folks who listen to the audiobooks regularly, I hope they catch up, they catch on to that, because I think it was really neat to have that. His Lando is amazing and spot on. And he sounded like Alden Ehrenreich very often as well. I think in general, his characters were really good. It's difficult for men to do women characters, but I thought his Qi'ra and Val were very, very solid too. And it was kind of like with Asajj Ventress. His Asajj Ventress was very good, but some of the other characters, not as much. But these were really, really good. His Beckett, he was really channeling the Woody Harrelson, which usually worked, but sometimes it was just a little too much and a little maybe outside of his comfort zone. But again, it was pretty spot on from it. The thing that I didn't like were all the Wookiee sounds. He actually did the Wookiee sounds, I believe, but he didn't have the range of Chewbacca. Chewbacca gets very loud or gets very quiet and has a lot of subtleties to those sound effects. And these were all pretty much like grunts and groan type of things. And they were all in the same register for the most part. They didn't have any highs or they didn't have any lows. And so it just got stale. You couldn't really get any emotion from it. And I wish they would have just used like actual Chewbacca Wookiee sounds from the movies to do it. I think it would have been far more effective. They've got the catalog there, so why not? I get you want this person to do everything, but I think it would have just been so much more engaging if they would have used the actual sounds. But again, this is another, near perfect. This is like a 9.5 out of 10 performance out of Mark Thompson. I thought it was a fantastic job all across the board.
I haven't heard a lot from him, but what I have heard has always been just like amazing. I think he's probably the best, if not the best. And it seems like he keeps getting these gigs. So, I mean, yeah, more power to him.
Yeah, he's very popular. Yeah, and rightfully so. He does a really good job, and he's committed, and he really feels a part of these characters. I listened to a couple of interviews, and he just enjoys this so much, and he appreciates the opportunity to keep coming back and doing it. So I'm always really happy when he's attached to a title, because I think he does a fantastic job.
All right. So what are Jonesy's nitpicks of the novel?
They were really, really small, and actually they were two of kind of the same things. So one, before we actually know Chewbacca's name, Mur Lafferty starts referencing Chewie as his name. And to me, that's just, it's backwards. And I'm pretty sure we had the exact same thing with the Falcon. Han was looking at it and marveling at it. And she calls it the Millennium Falcon before Lando introduces it as the Millennium Falcon. And to me, it was just a little out of order. Again, this is like super duper nitpicky, but I'd much rather the character introduce the names of important items than having them in the dialogue, in the in-between dialogue, right? Of in my head, like, well, Chewie said this. Well, let me know his name is Chewbacca first before and then let's figure out how to call him Chewie before we just kind of jump to Chewie. So those were really my only two nitpicks, though. I thought everything in the book, I was surprised how much I liked it. I was surprised how engaging it was and how seamless everything fit together. There were really no slow spots in it. And actually, again, we talked about early on, it wrapped up really, really fast, especially when you look at the Kessel Run and being stuck in the maw. That scene was so much, there was so much more to that scene than what was in the movie, that it was almost a little disorienting because I was like, okay, they got to be gone now. Okay, they got to be gone now. And then they're still struggling to get out. And like you said, there were a lot of jokes and things like that in there that they were in the movie too, but they weren't as pervasive, I think. But overall, solid book. It was only like a 10-hour audiobook. Yeah, so I'm assuming this was less than 300 pages or 300 pages or less on the actual novel.
You'd have to go. I don't have with you in front of me right now. Let me see if I can. Yeah, I don't remember exactly how many pages, but it was a definitely shorter novel. And maybe it was. I don't think I ever got into the 400. So yeah, I think you're right. I think it was in the 300s. I just don't remember if that was low or high. I would probably say more to the high number, but definitely not a huge novel. And the expanded edition that I've got at the very end's got some pics as well. They've got some pictures, and they look like candid shots that weren't used in the movie. I haven't looked to see whether or not some of this is already in the guide for Solo, but maybe it is. But it was kind of cool. There's some neat little things there as well that you get, but there's nothing breaking, nothing spoiler or shocking or anything like that. But I guess going back to the novel, just to kind of wrap it up here for the show, I really enjoyed it. It was a very quick read. There was had some really good moments. I thought it was done really well. Again, I'm a huge fan of her now, of Lafferty now. So if she, if anybody from Lucasfilm listens to this show, sign her up to do more, because she's a great writer, and I think she did a really good job with this. I think she's proven that she can hold her own, and I'd be interested to see what else she comes up with out of her own head, and give her some room to kind of play with the Star Wars universe. I think she's earned it at this point.
Yeah, and I when I compare it to Last Shot, it's kind of night and day for how I enjoyed it. And this book was, if people enjoy the novels and they're a little gun shy because of a lot of people claim the inconsistency right now with the adult versions of the books. I've heard the young adult novels are quite good and quite consistent, but this is one of those that if you like a straightforward kind of action show and you enjoyed the movie and you want to learn more about it, you really should go and read this book. It's a quick read and quite enjoyable.
Agreed there. All right. Well, that's going to do it for us. Next week, we are, finally, didn't think this day would come, but we're heading with 252. We're going to do a Star Wars Resistance reaction show. So we'll come back and kind of share our thoughts on how we felt the very first episode comes out. That'll be out on October 7th. So we'll record that probably the week of the 7th. So probably that Tuesday right after we'll record that. And we've got, we won't spoil it. We've got more stuff still coming. So with that, if you want to follow us on all of our social media pages, we've got all the links in the show notes, and we will have our, again, eargluemedia.com, the website for the podcast network, included as well. So that's going to do it for us. Any final thoughts before we go?
Nope. Giving everybody a 2-finger salute.
2-finger salute. And make sure you follow Jonesy so you can see all the pics and live vicariously through him as he is out at Disney World, Disneyland, wherever you're going. So I hate you. Anyways, we'll see you guys next week.
You're still listening? Wow. That's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property, and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.